So up next, we have Stefan Wiggers. He's a cloud architect, and he is speaking on cloud solutions with Cosmos DB.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the Azure Cosmos DB Conf for now, and there were some great sessions. I will continue with my story on integrating Azure Cosmos DB in your cloud solution. So I'm Stefan Wiggers, Technical Integration Architect at HSO. A little bit about myself. I'm an Azure MVP. I started out in the integration space, and since 2015, I'm now in the Azure SKU with the program. I write for InfoQ, so this is an international website about all kinds of technologies, including cloud technologies like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. Also organizer of some of the events that are listed here, user groups, where sometimes also Cosmos DB is one of the topics. And besides that, I like running, so hopefully when the global pandemic will go away, I'm able to continue my marathon running. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of tell my Cosmos DB story from my view, with some experience I had with this serverless or this capability in Azure. Also, some use cases where, I was integrating Azure Cosmos DB with search, leveraging your change feed capability, and also some integration with other Azure services. So initially, when Cosmos DB came to place, so this is a little bit, I also like to know a little bit about the background of the service. This was a couple of years ago. Nima Ramya, just SQL Pass, introduced the fact that, hey, there's a need because the global increase of data that kind of need what's called an earthly database, kind of get your scalability and consistency everywhere in the world. So kind of a project started which was called Project Florence by Dharma Shukla, which kind of, something with these trends and creating a database, it became Azure Cosmos DB. Around the time in 2017, the service was being announced, and I was trying to get a little bit more familiar with the service. I was working for a customer that was looking, for instance, into the graph model. And I think this has already been explained in previous sessions. So you have like your nodes or vertices, and you have your edges. So the combination with like someone knows someone else, someone uses a certain device, you can see this depicted in this picture. It's the underpinning kind of model you also find in LinkedIn and Facebook. So I was getting in familiar with side because of a project I was working for. So this was kind of a knowledge base for tax returns. So this was done by Read Business, part of the Relics group. So tax returns for the Dutch tax. They already had this old knowledge base implementation. It was an IaaS solution on combination with Solar technology. That's kind of a search engine. And the company wanted to move forward. They wanted to embrace the cloud. They want to kind of use a cloud platform like Azure with the pay-as-you-go service, but also completely go platform as a service. Also to create this future-proof knowledge base to give a little bit more richer search experience for the customers. Because of the tax returns is kind of a subscription model. It's kind of what's called an almanac, enabling people to fill in, or small and medium businesses to fill in their tax returns in a way that, grosses them much money. So the functional components is on one end, you have the content creation, which is a CMS system that flows in with jurisprudence, tax laws, etc., some leading comments explaining how you should interpret those tax laws, which comes then goes through what's called content constitution. So it's ingested, it's cleansed, it's subsequently pushed into a knowledge base where you have your content types and relations between them and index and all that stuff. So that's your knowledge base. So this is kind of the functional aspect. If we look at the building blocks, so we kind of set up this proof of architecture where we embraced some of the Azure components, including Cosmos DB. And some of the parts like the integrate, match, and merge was done through .NET or web jobs and functions to push one end the content, tax laws, jurisprudence, all these kind of content types into a document DB store, which was subsequently indexed, leveraging the integration with search. And on the other end, another part was being used, or at least you had the document model on one end, and you had the graph model on the other end to set the relationships between these content types. Also to, for instance, implement a type of hierarchy, maybe also with some recommendation with regards to finding related content to the tax laws itself. And then these were exposed through Content API, which was .NET APIs, functions, or other type of code exposed through web apps. So kind of the solution architecture in general is you have your CMS, so content management system output, which is the text, loader, unit experience, etc. The content itself being pushed into a document DB model as text with some characteristics and properties, indexed, and through endpoints enabled to a front end. Similarly, the metadata model around all these content types were pushed into a graph model, and then also being exposed through an API. And when the call was made to that graph model, the Gremlin API was being leveraged. So going forward, kind of what meant is that when someone looked up certain text laws, there was an initial call to the indexed endpoints that sits on top of the document DB store, but subsequently another call was being done to also get the related content provisioned, or at least made available in the front end. This way giving a more richer experience that previously was not aware because of the relations between the content. And then subsequently, if you clicked on one of the related content you wanted to drill now maybe more in a leading kind of comment or an explanatory how to interpret the law, then there was another call to the content itself. And this kind of led to a reference case because we kind of also, as a supplier for this solution, we're working closely together back then with Microsoft, with a former PM called Danny Lee, who helped us out in validating also our proof of architecture and see if this things we found out and these learnings to really push forward to an actual solution itself. And this is kind of what you can find back online as well. So going forward, so from my learnings of this project, I proceed on to another project. I'm usually doing integrations between the systems on-prem, in the cloud, or doing complete cloud-native integrations. But for a food distributor, we build up a solution where financial and operational data was being pushed into Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, which is currently now Finance and Supply Chain Management, still the same dynamic system, but a different naming. And we pushed some of that data that's being mapped a bit into, or at least pushed it to a logic app, which sits as a barrier between those systems, and then pushed the payload to what's called a recurring job. There were no business event implementations back then, so the ID coming back from recurring job was pushed at least to another logic app that would just get the status of that recurring job and if it's finalized or not. So this is kind of a hybrid solution where end-to-end monitoring is being put in place where we leverage Cosmos DB as well. So leverage all the metadata, the logging data centrally through a logic app into a Cosmos DB. So kind of what worked is all the logging was being pushed into a Cosmos DB instance using a logic app. It was indexed subsequently, similar to the learning app from our previous project. And then data could be shown through getting the data out of the Cosmos DB in combination with calling out Dynamics with the job ID or getting maybe some of the original mapped files from BizDoc server. So kind of this is how one of those functional logs will look like. So this is kind of one of the many loggings that were inside Cosmos DB, as you can show of the way it's structured, leading to the fact that you have this dashboard enabling the functional team that had to monitor the end-to-end process to look into the loggings of each of the process itself, enabling them to use some query capability as well. And drill down a little bit deeper into all of these steps, and these steps of course are all data harnessed as documents inside document DB and indexed, and then also getting access to the mapped files through a function. What we also created was kind of a functional alert, meaning that we also leverage the change feeds capability in Cosmos DB. So some of those events or loggings were information coming back from Dynamics indicating whether a job was filled or not. If a job was filled, so it's kind of an event sourcing looking at the state of each of these processes, was filled, process with an error or an error, meaning that, we want to isolate the information, push it into a blob storage, leading to a blob created event, so leveraging event grid, getting all the metadata out and push that notification to the functional team. And this led to the fact that the functional team will get a URL as well, straight away directing them to what went wrong from the processing of the recurring job and providing some details as well, as you can see here. So to demonstrate a bit how this change feed capability works, I kind of set up a demo. So imagine you have your house instrumented with all kinds of sensor and devices, and you've registered those with a service called IoT Hub. The data subsequently is being streamed through event hubs to a function which pushes that data into a Cosmos DB, which is kind of set as an event source. Also, in this demo, at least what I'm going to do is I'm going to mimic it, the fact that every change of one of the temperature of the room is also a trigger for the function with regards to a change feed. So there's an additional function. If the temperature goes above a certain temperature, then a message is being pushed to a queue, which has a logic app as a listener, and then with logic apps, there's many connectors you can leverage also for notifications like Twilio, Exchange. So I can send out a notification to my phone or somewhere else saying, hey, it's too hot. So I will move to my little setup. So I just have a few of these entries of a few of the rooms. Let's say, imagine in my house. And I could, for instance, do an update. And this would lead to the fact that a function will inspect, at least get the trigger because of the change feed and its binding, will look at the actual temperature. And if the temperature is above 25 Celsius, it will lead to the trigger of a logic app. So if I move to my logic app, and I've already ran this before, the logic app that's triggered because it listens to the queue. It will get the document, the change document, in this case where the temperature has changed. So it's changed to 29.5 Celsius degrees, meaning that it went over the threshold of 25, leading to the push of a message to a queue, which led to the fact that this logic app is being triggered, and it uses the SendGrid adapter. So it's one of the many adapters allowing to send a message to my email account. And this is the message I get back because, and this shows me, hey, the temperature is hot. So this is kind of the signaling towards my phone in this case, or email. So in general, this is just a simple showcase of how the change is being leveraged. And if I revert back to what I was talking about before for this customer, all the inserts of the logging leads to all these change feeds where there's a function behind it, leveraging that Cosmos DB binding, and then push out notifications in case there's an error. And finally, there's also a way of leveraging logic apps with Cosmos DB in a way of ingesting data. So you can set up a simple pipeline when there's or simple data ingestion pipeline using logic apps when there's open exchange rate data, for instance, so that's kind of currency data that you're going to ingest and push into a Cosmos DB. So this is kind of a setup. This is more a pet project, but it's derived from an actual use case at a customer where at an interval of a couple of hours, data had to be ingested, incorporated into a data store like a Cosmos DB to further processing and look into their way of providing services to their business. And the way this looks, and I will quickly go to my environment again. So this is kind of the setup completely. You see all kinds of Azure components, including a Cosmos DB, where all the currencies are being persisted. This will lead to an execution of a logic app. So this demo has been running for quite a while, and you can see kind of the output of the response from this open source exchange rate, which is being pushed into document store I have got my Cosmos DB, which is actually this one. And you see there's a lot of entries. I think this is one of the first. I've been running this sample for quite a bit since 2018. I think currently we're at 22,367 entries. So I'm going to use this data later on to do some analysis, maybe in signups or other. So I'm going to extend it again with some other integration with Cosmos DB, leading to more insights in how to leverage that data. So as you can see, you can integrate with many Azure kind of capabilities. Some are very interesting. I think search is one of the really valuable integrations with Cosmos DB, leading to quite some valuable value to the business with regards to your solution you're leveraging with Cosmos DB. I've noticed that in these cases with Read Business, but also with the whole View distributor, that Cosmos can be quite valuable and also a vital component in your solution architecture. What I also find out when I talked about some of these use cases, some of the people or developers like, yeah, but Cosmos DB is very expensive. And it's not the way you have to look like it. You have to look at the added value of Cosmos DB itself. With regards to the Relics group, they kind of had the subscription model, which grossed in a lot of money with regards to the subscriptions. And then based on the TCO, which was far less than the income, it wasn't so expensive. And with the whole View distributor, we had a TCO of our kind of monitoring solution in general, including we had the functional monitoring, which was less than 200 euros a month, but provided tremendous value for their operations and also the functional team behind Dynamics 365. So I'd like to thank you for attending this short but sweet session around integrating Azure Cosmos DB with your other Azure services. So back to you guys for some Q&A.
I think we're all stunned by your presentation.
Oh, really?
It was very good. Yeah, I'm interested in whether or not you see any kind of ranking order between what people prefer in these types of solutions, or particular approaches that people take when they're trying to make these composite architectures of cloud native services. There are popular patterns that you've seen yourself in the wild?
Yeah, it's definitely around what I talked about with regards to the event sourcing, enabling you to push documents into that store and then leveraging the change feeds, which unlocks many types of solutions you can do. In this case, it was just about operations, but it led to the fact that we could do targeted emailing towards the team that is, should get that information. Instead of generally having information or logging going to an IT department where, okay, what do I do now? Dynamics is broken. Oh, I don't know. Or dimension is missing. Or so, yeah, that's definitely one of the patterns I see a lot with regards to Cosmos DB. Other being storing data and leveraging search, which is a great combination, I must say.
Yeah. I guess one other question as well. We just had the cost optimization video flash up before, but I wondered if you had any tips or extra thoughts around how people can approach this. Was it, as you said, we have had this this outrageous accusation at times around the cost.
I know.
If you have any tips there.
Yeah, well, we did some performance testing. I think Mark Brown also created some really great code to do some optimizations and performance with regards to your Cosmos DB, determining what kind of RUs you need. Especially with these customers that I work with, we also very looked at cost and how to dimension, or at least how to set the RUs. We saw that the workloads with regards to that hybrid scenario wasn't that high, leading to, I would say, minimal costs. With regards to the setup for a knowledge base, we noticed that initially when you do your loads, you need to bump up the RUs, but then you slowly can decrease them because then all your content is in your data models, right? And then it depends more on the traffic. So you have to dynamically sometimes set your RUs depending if during business hours, for instance, there's more people going to let's say a knowledge base than in the night, right? So you have to look at those dimensions as well. So I think monitoring traffic, so we definitely looked at traffic, especially at the Relics group, we looked at traffic. So when can we expect more traffic and when can we expect less? And with the hybrid solution, it's just that we knew the numbers. We knew how many traffic there was going to be generated during the month. So there were a few operational data entries during the day, and with financial data, it was just once a month. So you know exactly when to expect. So you definitely have to look at traffic as well with regards to RUs and the usage and the workloads of your Cosmos DB.
Yeah. I think everybody should take note of your Twitter handle, because they'll be asking you for tips. That's really great. Yeah, engaging with the cloud economy as well as understanding the different offers that we saw before in that video.
True.
Do we have any other questions out there?
Yeah, one question that came up was, do you ever find yourself using the different forms of provisioning models for cost optimization, such as provision throughput or auto scale or serverless? And what are for that?
Going forward, yes, certainly. But initially, when I was doing this in 2017, 2018, there were no serverless. There were less capabilities back then than there are today. So Cosmos DB has definitely matured in that way, and these capabilities are currently available, at least for a while. But back in 2018, when I started out, and in the beginning of 2019, they were less available. So I think the Cosmos DB did a great team in expanding and evolving the service also in different models, enabling also people with serverless to see how the service works without getting this large amount of costs, so to say.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it.
You're welcome.